Hello again, guys. I'm Patty, the girl with blue energy. I have bipolar disorder and ADHD, and it has been a while since I've made a video. So today's video is going to be both an update and a discussion on how I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my first manic episode. And I've kind of made some decisions with this channel that this channel is going to be me talking about what I feel is important with regards to mental health issues in this country. And some of my views may be controversial or unpopular in the mental health community, but I also believe there are tons of people who will resonate and understand my feelings and what I have to say. So I am no longer worrying about how PC I am or whether I offend people. I am happy to report that I have been mentally stable for the last several months. I haven't had a manic episode or a major episode of depression. I haven't had any severe anxiety. And I've learned a lot of life skills over the last several years that I'm trying to share on this channel. So let me talk about how I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And I will start by saying I had a very dysfunctional home life in childhood. I left my parents' home when I was 14 because my stepmother developed schizophrenia. When I was 14, she had a psychotic break during her 5th pregnancy, where she went from being a successful insurance broker, winning trips to the Bahamas, and doing well with her life, to praying to toilet paper statues and not being able to have a sane conversation with her. That was a very traumatic time in my life. And probably created a lot of fear with regard to me developing a mental illness, especially since it runs so prevalently in my family. So at 14, I moved in with an aunt and uncle who were really good for me, so I thought they were very religious, and I stopped listening to secular music, and I became pretty obsessed with Christianity and religion. So I do believe this played a big part in my first manic episode, and it is something I plan to talk about in later episodes, religious trauma and religiosity, and how religion and the church can affect your mental health. But I'm not going to get into that today too much, other than the aspect it played in my first manic episode. So my first manic episode happened when I was 18. I had had episodes of severe depression before, but I had never had what I would call a manic episode before. I was a little hyperactive teenager, but I wasn't manic. So when I was 18, I had served on 2 summer missionary trips. I planned to go to Bible college. In fact, I was going to Bible college, and I was very, very religious. I had a lot of issues with sin, particularly when it came to sex. I was going to wait till I was married to have sex, but I met a guy that I fell crazy in love with really fast, because that's kind of how I do my relationships. So I ended up losing my virginity to him. And for normal people, this probably wouldn't cause that big of an issue, but I had so much turmoil and guilt from this ultimate sin I had committed that it put me into a really severe depression. And the boyfriend at the time was more of a normal person. We went to church together, but he was kind of a new Christian, a former drug addict, and he didn't relate with me. He didn't understand why I was so depressed about this. So I fell into a very, very, very deep depression. So that was the first time I had ever seen a psychiatrist, and they put me on Prozac. And I'm going to make some more videos about how I feel about antidepressants and medicating teenagers, and how dangerous some of these medications are. I've never spoken about this before, but I feel it's important. So I was put on Prozac. And within a week or two, of starting the Prozac, I had my first manic episode, and it was bad. I believe that antidepressants trigger mania in many people, especially if you're predisposed to bipolar disorder. And I'm not entirely sure whether or not this may have triggered my bipolar disorder or just made the symptoms more apparent. I've recently read a book called Anatomy of an Epidemic, and I find the book really interesting. And if you have a mental illness, I encourage you to read it, even if you disagree, just to hear his thoughts and his opinions. But he's talked about in this book how much our mental illnesses have increased since we've started using psychiatric medications. And he believes some of these medications actually cause mental illnesses because they change the biochemistry in your brain. I'm not sure that I agree with him, but I will adamantly agree that Prozac is what triggered my first manic episode. So after taking the Prozac, I became really suicidal and had violent thoughts. I took my uncle's gun and I went outside and fired a few test shots, and I was going to shoot myself, but I didn't want to just shoot myself. I wanted to go out with a bang. I wanted to do it in front of my boyfriend who had broken up with me because he couldn't handle me taking medication. In fact, he said to me, if you take medications, you're weak, and I don't want to be with you. So that is partially what contributed to my depression and subsequent manic episode, but I believe the Prozac is what triggered the mania. So I grabbed my uncle's gun, fired a few test shots, and then I freaked out for about 6 hours. I drove around North Carolina where I lived at the time. I drove by his house a number of times because I was going to go to his house and shoot myself in front of him. I had never planned to shoot him, but I was having violent, irrational thoughts about hurting myself. I remember at the time seeing police officers scouring by his house, but ironically, they never noticed my car, which I find kind of pathetic, but that's beside the point. So I drove around for hours in this frenzied, manic state where I wanted to shoot myself. I eventually drove to his house and gave him the gun. And then at some point, I locked myself in his bathroom and took all of my Prozac. And that was the first time I made a very serious suicide attempt. I remember at the time that I no longer cared if I went to hell, because hell was here on earth. I didn't care. And I was in a really frenzied state, which I believe was caused by the Prozac, which triggered the mania. And so when I was in the hospital, I was bouncing off the walls, jingling. I had a jingle bell around my neck and running around the halls, acting like an immature lunatic. And afterwards, I came down from this mania pretty quickly because they put me on lithium, which at the time they put me on too high of a dose. But I can't remember what medication I eventually ended up on, but I came down from it pretty quickly. And that was the extent of my first manic episode. During that time, for about a year, I was in and out of psychiatric facilities. I had attempted suicide many times when I was 18 and 19. And I started to hear voices. And this is something I've never really talked about publicly, but I've decided I'm going to be more open about it. My hallucinations were not like what I've heard other people describe as their manic hallucinations. Mine were deeply spiritual. My aunt and uncle, as I said, were very religious, so I listened to culty radio shows about demons and deliverance and demon possession. So I was utterly petrified of demons, and what do you know? I started hearing them. And I truly believe that this occurred both because of how my brain works, but also because of the fear I had growing up in this religious, oppressive home. So I started hearing voices that were scary and frightening, that I still haven't quite wrapped my head around what they were, because I am still a pretty spiritual person, and I still believe that that could have been demons or spiritual warfare. I know not everybody believes in that, but my psychosis wasn't, I thought I was a dragon, or that I thought I was Jesus. It was fear-based psychosis from the religious atmosphere I grew up in. At a certain point, I was going to a church, and they put me through a deliverance ministry where they tried to cast demons out of me, and that was utterly petrifying. I still remember it. I heard voices all around the room when this happened, and I still don't know what that was. But I do know that when I finally said, I do not believe in demons and evil spirits, and I'm done with this, that they went away. So I do believe that some of psychosis is in your head, so to say, that when you have a fear, you can create these things with your mind, because I have not had a psychotic episode like this since I was 20 years old. So that was my first episode of mania and how I became diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Since then, I have had numerous episodes of mania, none with psychosis, but many with insane spending, really bad decisions, and kind of the crazy things you hear about when you hear about bipolar mania. I'm going to talk about that a little more in upcoming videos, but my plan for this channel is to be a little bit more authentic and sincere. I do still plan to make researched and edited videos because I enjoy that, but I'm also going to talk about bipolar from a more personal perspective and give some of my tips on managing it, because I have learned so much over the years, and I think our mental health system is utterly failing people, that medications don't work for many people, and when they do work, they only work for a little while and then got to tinker with them again. I have a lot of strong opinions on psychiatric medications, particularly antidepressants, because I believe that antidepressants may be responsible for some of the mass shootings, some of the homicides that I've heard about, because they do alter your brain chemistry. And I'm going to talk about that in upcoming videos, whether it's popular or not. I think we are completely sweeping this under the rug, and that people do have violent reactions to antidepressants sometimes. And I think it's something that needs to be talked about. So that is what I plan to talk about in upcoming videos. Medications, their side effects, which ones work, why they work, the ketogenic diet and how much it's helped me. And I'm also going to talk about religious trauma and how trauma affects us physically and emotionally and spiritually, because trauma doesn't just go away. It's carried out in your body holistically. This is one of the reasons many of us have chronic pain. And I don't think we talk about this enough when it comes to mental health, how much trauma and our family upbringing and our religious beliefs impact our mental health. So those are some of the things I plan to talk about in upcoming videos. I really appreciate all of you who have subscribed to this channel, and I promise I haven't quit working on this, but I am prioritizing my own mental health. So if that means I don't make a video for a couple of months, then so be it. I am dedicated to this channel. I am dedicated to helping people that have bipolar disorder to feel sane and safe in their own skin, feel a little less stigmatized and a little more normal. And I'm just going to keep talking about this, and I hope that more people with bipolar disorder and their loved ones subscribe to my channel. So thank you for tuning in. I will talk to you guys again soon.